To Matrix Talk. And yes,
Happy
Phil, it
Monday.
says it's being recorded. Happy Monday, July the 10th, 2023. And we're going to talk a little bit about beginning act. And we're just going to focus on values today. And so
Yeah.
for this is for folks who know about traditional act and want to know a little bit more about the values component of it. But first, please don't hesitate to click the green button below and get one of those courses that are listed right before your eyes, including one coming up on this Friday, which is live. 3 CEU live webinar Act for PTSD.
Yep.
The rest of them are on demand. And we've been getting good feedback from.
Yeah, it's very nice feedback on our courses. Thank you, folks, that have been taking them.
That's cool. Oh, I have not said hello.
Oh, and you know what? Neither have I.
I'll say hello from Maine, because that's the next thing I was going to say to folks is to
check in.
You can check in if you're with us. Oh, Jasmine is with us. Not very many people signed up. I guess people weren't interested in beginning act values. I don't know. Who knows? We will do it anyway.
Yes.
Keep chugging along.
And now I'm in. Anybody else feel like it's there?
And Jasmine, hi guys, cool. Okay. And of course, people will watch this on the recordings for sure.
And speaking of recordings, I see it is recording. So these are things we have to check now, folks.
Yeah, well, the
internet's kind of doing funky stuff today.
And not just this, but well, actually, this has not been wonky, but other things have been wonky. We shall see.
Yep.
So let's see. Click on the green button. Buy the courses. We got that. Check. We got chat in. Check.
Talked about this Friday. Check.
We talked about this Friday. We're good. We're good
at Jasmine. She's not into values.
Not into values, right? Well, Jasmine and others. This is written, as I said. I began for people who are familiar with ACT, and usually the sentence that follows about ACT includes the words mindfulness and values.
Yep.
In some way or form or another. And people, one of the things that people do that when they first start learning about ACT is to do some values exercise with clients and values worksheets and such.
Values assessment.
As they grab it, they know the word, and it's when you know a word,
well, you want to use it.
You want to use it, and you think to yourself, "Gee, I can do this."
Yes,
because I really can't figure out the rest of this ACT business, but I can figure out this values thing.
Yeah,
I think
that I'm familiar with.
And for that matter, they can figure out mindfulness because they've probably done some kind of
come across somewhere, right?
Meditation, yoga, that kind of stuff. And so that's also familiar. So I'll do that. So people end up doing mindfulness stuff and values stuff. And they may do it and use ACT and then never know about the importance or what's the theoretical and philosophical underpinnings of this values. Because people do it, they haul it out and they use it, but they don't really. Well, they would say if you said, "Yep, I did all the ACT boot camps and trainings with Hayes and Wilson and those. I did too," and all the stuff. Now the drop what you pick up, right? Yeah,
take like and leave the rest, right, Jasmine?
With all of that said, and now for those who know the ACT matrix, and they'll say, "Well, you guys don't talk about values. You ask this who's important to you." Yep. Yes, and that is satisfying the philosophical and theoretical underpinnings that we need it to satisfy. We still need it, but
Oh yeah.
we've replaced it with who's important to you. So some people they don't like values or something. It's the word. It's the word values from an RFT perspective. That is relational frame theory, which basically says you frame stuff onto sounds and those become words. So one of the words in the English language is values, and it's got stuff framed on it. Well, some of the stuff it has framed on it is religious values. Another is politics and values, and there's
Yes.
family
Family
values.
values.
There's
Community values.
right. So there is this stuff that is framed onto, related to the word values. So when you say the word values, that stuff shows up. And for some people, they want to get into an argument with you about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Seriously, folks, we're not making this up. We were in the arguments. And
Oh yes.
And those occurred like once a day.
Mm-hmm.
And so we learned how to not use the word values. Essentially, we were punished for using the word values.
Well, we were taught by the people that we were showing it to.
Yeah.
We learned it.
They learned us to not use that
Yeah,
word.
they schooled us real good.
Don't use that word. We don't like that word.
Yeah. Okay, but you are.
We said, we finally figured it out, got it. And after some mucking around, we found out that who's important to you doesn't seem to get anybody upset. And once again, I'll go back to it satisfies the philosophical, particularly the philosophical underpinnings that ACT is built on. ACT is a very cool coaching program, psychotherapy program, whatever you want to look at it, because Steve Hayes and company spent the time to pay attention to the philosophy, to pay attention to the theory underneath it, and really pay attention. Don't give it short shrift. And that has made it very powerful. Now, in its final application, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy was the book, it got a little bit complicated. Is that a good word? Complicated?
Deep in the weeds.
Deep in the weeds. Yeah.
That's how I found Kevin, folks.
Right,
I was deep in the weeds with the ACT book and like, gotta be another way around this.
So Kevin comes along and I hopefully got people out in the fairway. It's still golf.
Yeah, exactly. Out in the fairway. Yeah.
It's got some difficulty to it, but at least you're in the fairway.
Now you're in the game. You got a chance. You got a fighting chance now.
Now you got a chance of making the green. Okay, and so with all of that preamble in it, well, okay, so who's important to you? What's that for? It establishes a stated direction. Okay. That's what it does. And so the philosophy behind ACT literally requires that you somehow make known the direction that you would like to go in. So, and one direction that we all like to go in is approaching who's important to us. And that includes yourself. Okay. So I am going to do behaviors. So there comes in Jasmine's behaviors. And I'm going to look at those behaviors and how they work in me approaching myself and other people. So I'm going to do behaviors and I'm going to notice how they work for my relationship with my wife. So I'm going to do behaviors and I'm going to notice how they work for my relationship with Phil. There's Phil right there, right? This is but notice I now have a way of analyzing my own behavior. That is my behavior working for my relationship with myself? Is my behaviors working for my relationship with Phil? Are my behaviors working for my relationship with my wife? It goes on, and that's why it fits it. And they say, well, why is that important? Well, if you lop off who's important or even the values, and you say, I'm analyzing my behavior.
Good for you.
I'm noticing if my behavior works.
Good for you.
Right. And there's sort of a pregnant pause there, right? Like,
and
right. And of course, we want it works for what? What's it work for, right? And you'll notice in the analysis of your own behavior, you really need that direction, that value, that who's important, that signpost in the distance to then ask, are these behaviors working to get me there? It's a very simple notion, but gravity is pretty simple too, but it's really powerful.
Yeah. Some cool stuff with gravity.
And so that's what this is for. So people might go into it and they're approaching values as if they're, well, religious values, family values, or you just need to have values. Okay. Now, well, gee, Phil, that brought me to another point.
Ooh.
What's that sentence? You just need to have values.
There's that need word.
Like
we're not kneading dough, folks. Need.
And what that a sentence like that violates the tenets of ACT.
Horribly.
Because it's judgmental.
Yeah.
And you can read all of the ACT books, and somewhere deep inside of them, or maybe not so deep, you will find that it is non-judgmental. We ixnay on the judging thing. So if I say you need values, I just said you don't have values. Now let's go back to RFT, relational frame theory. In relational frame theory, it's a way of showing how things are related. And if you say something is not something, that's on the other end of the tail of something. And so if you need values, it automatically means you don't have values, or at least you don't have the right values. Notice I just judged somebody. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why some folks don't like the term values, is they think you're dissing on them. You're insulting them in some way.
You're talking down to them.
Talking down to them. You've gone to a one-up level with them. And by the way, I have seen a lot of people in ACT presentations do just that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it very quickly becomes a power differential. And you need to do this. But I don't want to do this values worksheet. Well, you need to do it anyway.
Yeah, this is what we're doing now.
All right, you just went into teacher mode. And teacher mode means you've gone up. The student is down there. And then sort of you could put an or else on the end of it.
Yeah.
do this value sheet or else. Oh, no, not or else. I hate or else.
Ooh. Like a red check mark next to you.
It'll go on your permanent record.
Exactly. It goes on your, and it is permanent. Having worked in schools, those things do follow. By the way,
we just slip back into why we don't use the word value. Yeah. That's how all this came up. But nevertheless, who's important fits the bill. It gives us a direction. And that, my friends, is why, from an ACT philosophical and theoretical point of view, you're using values. It's to establish a direction for the very powerful purpose of later on being able to ask the question, are my behaviors working?
Hmm.
And now you got to come for da, 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 to get me toward who's important to me. Bingo. And
That
now
I
you
wrap my head around.
now you can do that workability analysis. And that's why it's often called workability. And the philosophical framework that ACT is built on, the nickname for it is the workability framework or the workability model. The not so friendly name for it is functional contextualism. Yeah, you heard that right. And that's not friendly. No. But workability is workability is quite friendly, and that's what you need it for. So when you go to do values work, even if you stick with the word values, then no, it's you're starting there, and it's so way later you can get the person to asking, is this working? Are these behaviors work? Are my behaviors working? Now, I keep saying behaviors. That's because ACT is built on a behavioral model. Maybe, and I think a lot of people don't know that.
That's another thing that whizzes right by people. Yep.
Yeah, that goes right by them. And why? Well, for one reason, why? Because Skinner got maligned horribly back in the day, and after a while, no one wanted to be a behaviorist, and he was really a nice guy and trying to do harm to anybody. And behavioral stuff is actually quite powerful. And everybody thinks it's powerful for dogs and stuff, but they don't think it's powerful for humans. Guess what?
Well, and small children too. I think they think it's powerful for them too.
So it's built on that, and that's why we keep going back. Are my behaviors, my actions? That's what acts. It says acceptance and commitment therapy, but ACT is short for action. Just
that's it. ACT.
and so it's ACT for the purpose of, I'll stick with who's important to me, so that later on I can notice if my behaviors, my actions are working. Now, it's not so much a behavioristic model because it now employs the observer self. And the observer self was not part of the traditional Skinner behavioral stuff, okay? But nevertheless, if you ask somebody where you're from, they'll tell you. And the part of the self that's doing that talking is your observer self. It's the self that's been with you ever since you could observe, which, by the way, is right about the time you get language. Because observing is not so good if you can't talk about it. So even if you were observing before then, you can't put it into words because you didn't have words. So words come along, now you have this now I like to call it a narrator of life.
Storyteller.
Your storyteller. It tells the story of your life. And of course, we all love to hear those kind of stories, especially of famous people. So they get on a talk show and the talk show host says, "Hey, famous person, tell me about yourself."
Yeah. How'd you get to be so famous?
And we're all ears. We go, "Oh." But that's the narrator. That's what's going on. So why is that important? Well, it's that narrator that's ultimately adding the behaviors to your story that work. That's what it's looking for.
Yep.
Is behaviors that work to move your story along to where you want to go, right? And what's important to you. I'm going to have a successful story. because none of us want to have, at least here in the Western world, a failure story. Those aren't any fun, are they, Phil?
No, well, unless you go to the movies and you like seeing someone else's failure, then maybe it might be
There you go.
entertaining mildly.
But other than that,
I don't like them anyhow, but a lot of people do.
I never took the screen off. How do you stop sharing? Oh, it's right there. There we are.
Oh, yeah.
And so yeah, so that's what. So now the observer self needs to back up and look at the big picture. And the original name for ACT was comprehensive distancing, i.e., the observer self goes from flat up against your story. It backs up and backs up and backs up so that it can more and more narrate your story, flexibly narrate your story.
Observer
So it would be like, here's a person that's telling their own story and they have no choice in their next actions. None. Your life is determined.
Yeah, like robotic.
Right. Well, ain't nobody buying that. Not in the Western world. Nope. They want choices. So it's from this comprehensive view that this term, I can choose my behaviors, comes on board. Okay. And now you feel flexible. And that's what we mean by psychological flexibility.
Yep.
Psychological meaning it's my observer self telling the story of me. And the flexibility is that I have different behaviors I can try. And you really need to have that because you don't know what's going to work for moving forward, who's important to you, or even other stuff, values if you want to say it, but you don't know what's going to work. And so you got to try stuff out. And rats, not all of it works.
Well, that's the way it goes.
That's the way it is, folks. Life is definitely trial and error, and a few successes.
Yeah.
So the whole point is from this distance point of view, you're now saying, being able to analyze, okay, that works. That behavior, that action works. I'll keep it. Oh, that one didn't work. Toss that aside. And that's all well and good, except for language, because then your brain, your mind gets in there and says, no. It's working. Really.
Can't toss language aside.
Believe me, it's working. And our behavior is working. And you do it again, and it didn't work. And your mind says, don't worry about it.
No, just keep going. Keep doing it.
Keep doing that. Keep doing that over and over again.
You're fine. Keep doing it.
And that's and so ultimately then later on, I'm not today, but later on, ACT then goes to work on that mind of yours that's getting in the way of that very efficient process of the observer self noticing behaviors that work. You keep the ones that work, you discard the ones that don't work. It's a very efficient system. It's the same system you use to walk with, learn how to walk with, you learn how to ride a bike with, you learn how to talk with, for that matter. It's trial and error, but it quickly learns what to keep and what to discard until language comes along. And language is abysmal at that.
Don't tell language that, though, because you don't understand.
Language will say, no.
We'll argue with you.
I'm fabulous at that.
The best. I'm the best.
I'm the best. Yeah. Your mind's sort of naturally narcissistic.
It always has my best interest.
Yeah, meaning the mind.
My mind's best interest.
The mind's best interest. But the world is full of examples of how the mind is not good at learning new behaviors. Okay.
No.
Where you would think your way into the Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
You would think your way into being a quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah. Oh, let's go Hall of Fame. I'm going Hall of Fame.
All the way to Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame, all the way.
All the way. Oh, from the comfort of my chair.
Yeah. Never even changing the channel.
And so this is your mind. We're picking on it now. So the rest of ACT after this value stuff is to get that other stuff out of the way. We'll get to that another time.
Yeah.
For today, we're talking about the importance of establishing that signpost. That's values. Bill and I use who's important.
It's our criteria.
Because that works for us. And notice what I said, it works. We tried values. Well, it just made our lives miserable because we kept having people argue with us.
They did not like it.
And we had enough. He saw a lot of students and I saw a lot of vets. I mean, a lot, meaning many per week. And so you were having 1 or 2, 3 of these arguments a week.
Oh, yeah.
So that gets old in a real hurry. You know? So gave that up. Finally found who's important and we're good. I reiterate that, but still, you need the direction. You need the signpost. So think of you're trying to establish a relationship with somebody. Well, first you meet them, then you ask them out on a date. You know, one thing leads to another. Yay. Well, that's all learning through experience.
Yep.
Behavior.
Trial and error.
Trial and error. Right. I'll try this one. What's your sign?
Yeah.
Person slams the door. Well, I guess I won't use that. Come on.
Stay on the sign stuff.
By the way, any of you youngsters, that was a joke. Come online in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah. No, I think it's still rolling around out there, Kevin.
You think so?
Oh yeah, it's definitely. I hear people talking.
I'm sure there's smooth operators that can use
it
and get it to work, but nevertheless, you learn through experience, right? And that's it. You learn what works in terms of behaviors through experience. That's it. Verbal learning. Ixnay.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn the 50 states through the names and capitals of all 50 states via verbal learning, but you won't learn how to walk to them that way, or drive to them, or ride to them, or anything else. You need to do the experience. So that's what ACT is about. So that's what we're doing values for. So when we say beginning ACT values, we're establishing a signpost. And I don't think most books really tell you that right away.
No.
So, it is important to do values exercises, blah, 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 blah. And they leave out the why it's important. I can throw some shade on folks, and that a lot of people that say they're ACT experts don't know what I just said. Bill will back me up.
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
Now, Steve Hayes knows what I just said.
Yep.
Kelly Wilson knows what I just said. Kirk Strassel knows, and there's many others. I'm not saying we're the only ones, but in the hundreds and thousands of people that use ACT, a lot of them don't know that the philosophical underpinnings require that you state a signpost, a direction, and the values are a direction, so that you can do the workability analysis. Period. And then you will see something like this. After that, then it's avoiding the verbal entanglements.
That's a good word. I like that word, entanglements.
You like that, huh?
Entanglements. I like to say entanglements.
Other than that, your mind's screwing the process up. But,
I picture like a ball of thread where you're just trying to pull what the heck I got.
So anyways, if you can get your mind quiet and flexible and observer, and you do stuff. But notice you can't sit on your couch and do this. You got to get up, move around, right? But you can't move around aimlessly. you need a direction. So we choose a direction. For most people, it's who's important. And then you do behaviors and notice if they work.
Yep.
That's it. Yeah. So,
Yep.
and so it's pretty cool. It's very cool, actually. Very cool. So when we nonchalantly say, hey, who's important to you? When we start the matrix, we're establishing the signpost.
Stating our direction right up front.
Yeah. Boom. That we're actually very closely following the tenets of functional contextualism. And we just said, hey, I have discovered that it's really nice to start with this conversation. Who's important to you? And you say, well, that was nice and light and breezy. That didn't sound philosophical at all.
Sounded kind of nice, actually.
And that, my friends, is sort of that's what I'm known for. Taking complicated stuff and making it simple.
Yes.
I get to say in 1983 or 2 or something, I took a death and dying class, and they had us write our epitaph for our tombstone. And I wrote, he made things simpler. So I've been at this for a few years.
Yeah, just a few.
A few years of making things simpler. So I enjoy doing that. So that's it. Oh, well, that's a signpost, isn't it, Phil?
Absolutely.
Because my signpost is, if I start to learn to do something, I automatically go for the simplification. I start thinking of, well, how could this be simpler? Well, I mean, if it's already simple, it's simple. I don't try to make what's simple simpler.
Yep, you just go with it.
But a lot of times you tackle things and woohoo, that's complicated. Whoa. And
you could say that you are reducing the entanglements.
Exactly. So I'm going to go, oh, let me see if I can streamline this and write it down and diagram it and make it more simpler for folks. That's natural. Just something I've always done, find interesting to do. So that's ACT and that's values. So we did it, Phil.
We did.
Now people can watch this and they know just why the heck you're working on values, not just because it sounds good.
Yeah. Nope, we didn't just, put a pin on a map.
And it's why Hayes and all of them, that they came up with values. Okay, but they developed this in academia, and we were using it literally out on the streets in some cases. And,
yeah, it's got to work at the level of everyone.
Right. So translating academe stuff into stuff that works on the streets
doesn't go.
Well, you don't want to transfer it instantly because it doesn't work. But if you bring it down to third grade language or whatever, like who's important to you. By the way, a preschooler will answer that question for you.
Oh, beautifully.
Yeah. And, so we did it. I think we've done a good job. At least that's what my observer self tells me. Maybe you're true, maybe wrong.
We set out today. Our valued direction was to talk about beginning, act, and values, and I dare say we have arrived there.
Damn, amazing.
And it's also part of, as we've talked about before, this is the get moving part of the ACT process.
There's 3 big spinning processes that ACT works with, and one of them is the get moving. Makes sense, folks. You're not going to learn by doing if you're not moving. So get moving. And so this is in the get moving category, yes.
Yeah.
The other 2, by the way, are show up to the present moment and let go of your struggle with language, or internal events. It's really let go of verbal entanglements. Way to say it. But let go, show up, get moving, and this was part of the get moving. So now we will be back on Thursday.
Thursday, not Wednesday. Right. We're going to.
Strange week.
Yep.
But do sign up. If you'll click on the green button, you can sign up for Friday. Friday morning, we're going to do a PTSD workshop. Live workshop. So sign up for it, please.
9 to 12, 3 CEs.
Yep. 3 CEs. Yes.
Yep.
Cool. And yes, Jasmine. Oh, and Phil, did you see where I uploaded the video for the pattern?
Oh, the pattern recognition. Yes.
Okay. So I did upload the video.
Do the eval form, and it'll be available soon.
I would say, well, this week or next.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we go. Bye-bye. Have a great Monday, everybody.
Take care.